and welcome everybody to The Conversationist. Today we are just going over basically what the channel is about, what sort of things we're going to be talking about. I've got Ben with me today. Ben, say hi.
Hello there. I'll be your favourite pain in the arse for these
Saying
next
you're
six.
saying stuff, but I can't hear you. 1 second. 1 second, sorry. Technical difficulties again.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, you should be able to hear you. Say hi again. Oh, you muted yourself.
Hello.
I don't know if that's... I know what it is. 1 second. Let me just pause the video. Such a mess. Say hi.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry. This is my first time trying this thing, so you'll have to excuse me.
Yeah, it's all your fault, Patria.
Yep. I'm a massive scrub, so... yeah.
Hi, guys. If you're into politics, I'll be your favourite pain in the arse from now on.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that one. But yeah. So basically the channel is going to be all about debates on different subjects and basically just getting as many people from different points of view as possible onto the channel, discussing as many different things as we can as well. Both economic and social, so yeah.
Things will range from economics to the role of the state to vaxxers to religion. So
yeah. So the first debate that we're hopefully going to be doing will be between Ben, who we have in the chat, and Uther, who couldn't be here at the moment. He's got work to do, but
could be here if he wanted.
Anyway, we'll be debating nationalism versus internationalism. Ben, you'll be arguing for internationalism. Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Uther will be debating for nationalism. Yes,
he will be.
Sheet here with the questions on as well. So yeah, basically the basic format of it will be we'll do an introduction similar to what we're doing now, probably a bit shorter actually, to be fair. Each person will get to do a opening statement, and then there will be a series of questions from me. For the first debate that we're doing, there will be 4 questions, although 2 of them are specifically directed to either person. And we have 5 minutes open debate in between each question, and then once all the questions have been asked, there will be 30 minutes open debate. So anybody gets to talk about whatever they want, and then closing. And then
hopefully we won't throttle each other too much.
Hopefully,
well, that sound like it's going to kill me.
Yeah, hopefully when we watch this back it won't be too cringy, although knowing me I'll probably just be like crying at the sound of my own voice.
I can't stand mine.
See, I think it's the same for everybody though, to be fair, but yeah. So as far as what we're debating, as far as like specific subjects, as I said, we've got nationalism versus internationalism, as well as things like one we were going to do was feminism versus MRA, kind of parallels between them, who's wrong, who's right, bad things each group has done. And
you'll also learn, viewers, that I am the most biased person you'll ever meet or ever have the misfortune to listen to.
Yes, and that's why I'm moderator, because I feel like I'm pretty much a fence sitter on a lot of political issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully. Because politically, we agreed the other day I was it a social democrat? We agreed that I was the other day.
So we social democrat between that and mutualism, really. So
Yeah. Although I suppose I consider myself somebody that's able to see the other person's point of view, I guess, which is the point of me being mod, I guess. And what would you say,
yes.
Ben?
Well, generally, I'm a socialist by the definition of democratic worker control over the means of production. But to get into specifics, I follow people like Kropotkin as an ANCOM. So,
Okay. Do you want to do like a quick overview of your politics? Perhaps go in a bit more depth than the brief definition.
uh, for what ANCOM or
Just in general. So if you're religious at all or anything like that.
I'm not. I'm somewhere between agnostic and atheist. I don't believe you can prove there is no God, but I don't believe you can prove there is one either, without literally God coming down and saying hi. Um, I'm a socialist. I'm a libertarian in the aspect of I believe in the abolition of hierarchies and which includes the state by the definition that I go by, which is the monopolization of violence. Um, I'm a feminist, or a socialist feminist specifically, because there are gender inequalities. I'm not saying women have it all bad, but because men certainly have issues, believe me, I can say that. But I do believe that the inequalities between the genders is a result of capitalism. Um, I'm not a racist. That's important for later debates. Uh,
I think that goes for most people, but yeah, I see why you're saying that.
well, if I do end up doing the debate about race, I mean, I have to state that so that people know which side I'm on.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Uh,
So, sorry.
I'm a. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, if you're I don't believe in anti-vaxxing. I think that's stupid. Uh, what other
No.
questions were there, Patria? What for the issues?
I guess that's it. You've sort of covered most things. For me, religiously, I think we both agree on that atheist agnostic. Although I do sort of practice Wicca, I don't necessarily, worship the
Swan
gods.
worship Woden.
Worship Satan. I'm joking. I don't.
Baphomet.
Um, but no, I do like tarot cards and like good luck charms and stuff like that. Very basic. I celebrate the Sabbaths as well.
An excuse to get pissed.
Sort of, I guess. Yeah. But yeah. I do stuff like grounding as well, which is where you walk out in nature barefoot. I know it seems like a really weird thing to do, but I find a lot of it's meditative. I don't think I'm saying that right, but it helps me understand situations better as well, and specifically in reference to tarot cards. But yeah, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent.
Yes, the cards will tell me my future.
Well, sort of, and not. There's. I'd have to go into more depth about that, but yeah. As far as vaccinating, I think I agree with Ben. To be fair,
I mean, I
it's kind
I do understand anti-vaxxers in the extent that they don't trust the government to do things for them. They think they're
of.
deliberately hurting their kids or something, which the government isn't above. But science basically shows that to be wrong. And even if you don't trust the government, you should go by science.
Okay, yeah, I think I can agree with you on that one. There are definitely
Even when we get anti-vaxxers on here, I don't think anyone will hate the government more than me.
fair enough. Personally, I agree with the state, but my idea of what the state is for. Essentially, the state is there to protect the civilians and nothing else, really, I guess.
It is worth noting that we go by different definitions of the state.
Yeah, I think I'm more of sort of the definition of, government, police force, that kind of thing.
Yeah, while I focus more on the monopolization of the means of coercion and violence.
Yeah. Personally, obviously, I mean, I believe in a non-violent state, although I suppose you probably argue that a state itself would be violent in a way, I guess. But yeah, you get what I mean.
Well, by the definitions that I use, it's an oxymoron. But I assume but since we use different definitions, it's fine.
Yeah. Personally, I forgot what I was going to say. Mine's gone blank. Sorry.
Economics, violence.
Economics, with being a social democrat / mutualist.
Yeah, that's specifically referring to the economic side of it, guys. Patria is not so much a mutualist in the aspect of direct democracy.
Yeah. For me, it's basically capitalism with a beefed up welfare state.
But you're not opposed to socialism either.
Yeah, I guess. But I suppose my ideals are pre-capitalist, I guess. Because as I said, I feel like to me, it's about making sure the poorer people have a basic standard of living whilst also allowing and rewarding those that work hard. Personally,
I would dispute this claim, but let's save that for the economics video.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one, guys. We're having an economics debate between socialism, capitalism, and state ownership. So
yeah. Because I mean, personally as well.
By the way, Luther's boyfriend would be really good for the state ownership one.
Yeah. But yeah, as I said, personally, I'm a major pacifist, whereas Ben is, I wouldn't say like violent, but allows circumstances. Yeah. I mean, like bringing up the point of how much arms cost to send over to the Middle East and countries like that. I think I saw a post the other day, basically saying one bomb that we sent over there could house our homeless for a year, and it's things like that. I don't like war or violence in general at all.
I completely disagree with the foreign policy aggression that we show at the moment, and with selling arms to rogue states like Saudi Arabia. Oh, yeah. And also, I'm pretty sure Patria agrees with me on this, that we are both pro-gay rights.
Oh, definitely. I think as long as the actions of those groups aren't infringing on another group, if that makes sense, overcorrection in a way, if you get what I mean. Yeah. When I say that, I mean with the kind of extreme feminists, I guess, that.
Well, there are three types. I assume you're thinking radical.
Yeah, radical. Well, yeah, we'll call them radical feminists. The types that as soon as you bring up a men's issue, they start calling you a misogynist and stuff. I can't deal with that. But in terms of men and women being equal, I definitely agree with that. And just LGBT rights in general. I mean, it'd be pretty stupid for me to be anti-LGBT. One of my best friends is trans, so.
I'm one of 2 straight people in my whole family, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something in my family as such. It's more my friendship groups and stuff that are quite full of LGBT people, and obviously I'd support them every step of the way. You know, I mentioned my best friend. You know, we've talked for hours on just what kind of struggles that he faces, being trans, and you know, to me personally, it's quite interesting to learn the struggles of somebody else. I suppose it's not judging someone before you've walked a mile in their shoes, I guess, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any other issues with Miss? You've got the list, haven't you?
Um. Oh. Of the subjects that we're doing, yeah, I have it somewhere, but I can't find it at the moment because I'm an idiot and I've lost it. Is it behind me? Sorry, this is my fault. I'm really unorganized. That's not the list. One second. I'll see if I can get it up on Facebook. One second, because I think I sent it to you.
I'm doing it on Facebook already.
But as well, in terms of the channel, anybody that wants to debate is welcome to ask. You know, and as far as you know, being accepted for a debate or being chosen for a debate, we will do that as we do the debates, if that makes sense. So if you send a message in saying, you know, I'm pro-choice, we would pick you to debate somebody who's pro-life, that kind of thing.
That is a big issue as well. I am pro-choice. I had to think of that for a sec. I don't know why. I'm pro-choice, but I do believe that the threshold to the window of opportunity to have the abortion should be smaller because of scientific reasons, where babies have been found to survive outside of the womb after 22 weeks.
Yep, I can definitely get behind that. Personally, I'm pro-choice as well.
And I'm pro. I'm sorry. I'm also pro. What's it called? Renewable energy rather than fossil fuels and stuff like that.
Yeah, being for you know, just being eco-friendly. So the topics we've got is should we vaccinate? Pro-vax versus anti-vax. Race extremism. We'll be looking at both sides of it. And debating, you know, are they similar sort of subjects that each group bring up? The actions of both groups as well. Because I mean, you've got people like Ghazi Kodzo, who, you know, calls white people cave beasts and stuff like that. And then obviously you've got the growing sort of far right presence within Europe as well.
And America a lot as well.
Yeah. You know, people like Richard Spencer.
You know, just the general actually fascist movements. They're pretty good examples.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really name that many people on either side off the top of my head. I don't really look into it, but I think it's something important to look into.
There's a Facebook group called Ancapistan if you're interested in looking at what they're actually like, viewers.
I'll try and post a link to that once.
I really don't recommend that. They're not a nice place.
Okay, fair enough. I will put like a warning with it then. As I said earlier, we were going to go over gender equality, so feminism versus the men's rights movement. Again, personally, being someone who believes in men and women being equal, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a feminist. I call myself egalitarian. I have my reasons. But, you know, looking at what good and bad each side has done, again, with the race extremism stuff, it'll be very similar questions. free speech as well, whether we believe it, how important we think it is, because essentially for me personally, I am a free speech absolutist, basically.
While I am more limited on free speech, but solely in the aspect of when people are attacking protected characteristics such as racism, sexism, homophobia, I would not allow that in the public domain or anything like that. But otherwise, free speech is fine and I think necessary.
Yeah. 1 second. I'm just gonna get my charger. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just, as I said, my phone's died, so my camera's probably switched off. Give me a second.
I am also pro capital punishment in some extreme cases. I'm for the legalization of a large amount of drugs if they're heavily regulated to ensure the health of the user is, well, to a higher standard than what it would be. I am pro euthanasia in certain circumstances, pro immigration. I think that's all of the ones that we're covering. Yeah, that's all the ones we're covering because things like the NHS are just an extension of the economics, which I already stated.
Yeah, well, with me personally, it's a bit of a tricky subject for me, euthanasia and capital punishment as well, because for me personally, I'm a conscientious objector. I mean, I'm vegetarian as well. I mean, I can't even kill an animal, never mind a person. I always make that joke. Sorry.
I would sooner kill a person than an animal, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm that person.
I can't do anything wrong. Some humans deserve it.
Yeah, well, I'd argue differently, but anyway, I'm that person that is like not phased when they kill people, but I'm like, no, not the dog, when they kill the dog. So, yeah. Give me a second, because I'm clipping out my mic is too loud. 1 second.
The reason why we're mentioning our own personal views, viewers, is because, Patria, I assume, is going to moderate them all, while I am going to participate in all but one, as far as I'm aware. So it is useful so that you know which positions that me and Patria subscribe to, just so you know if you want to listen to us when we do those videos. You might hate me, I don't know.
Yeah, and as well, just because we subscribe to a certain ideology doesn't necessarily mean that we are unwilling to change our points of view. To me, I suppose for me, that sort of
issues, yeah.
point, yeah. So, as I said, to me, that's sort of the point of this project is to have an open discussion. Sorry.
That was awful.
Yeah, sorry, that's my fault. But the point of this project, you can hear me, can't you? Well, let me show my gate up. There we go. No, I shouldn't. No, okay. I'm echoing a little bit, but I think.
Yeah, you are.
I don't think we're going to really be able to do much about that, unfortunately. I'll turn my mic a bit. There we go. That should turn it down, I think. Sorry. 1 second. Technical issues again. Yay.
Woo!
I'm on loudspeaker as well, that's why. There we go. Oh, no, maybe not. Okay. What the heck is going on? Because I should be muted. But I'm not. I think I'm going to have to just turn my camera off for a bit whilst my phone charges up a bit, and then I'll... Oh, I've just had an idea. 1 second. Sorry, there's
with the viewers, they'll hate me.
Yeah, this isn't going perfectly, but I mean, could be going worse. 1 second, I'm just going to connect some Bluetooth headphones so that you can't hear me echoing constantly. Um, what were we talking about before I started echoing?
I assume points of view.
Yeah, because we were talking about capital punishment and something along the lines of capital punishment. I'm just trying to find his blank right now. Um, yeah, because we were looking at other subjects as well. That we were going to be talking about. As we said earlier, abortion, so pro-life and pro-choice. Personally, I think we're both pro-choice, aren't we?
Yeah. So
Although
like just think so long as there's as again, like obviously it does become a baby at a point. I just believe that's 22 weeks rather than the 26 that it currently is. I might have the numbers mixed up, but we're both in the UK, by the way. That's what the numbers are here. I might have
yeah,
the numbers a little wrong, but I think it's 22 weeks that the recent scientific paper said that babies could survive outside of the womb for, and that's where scientifically where life is drawn at.
hmm I think personally I'd agree with that as well. Although I don't know if we disagree on the circumstances that allow that kind of thing.
In what way?
So like, say the mother is in a financial situation where she feels like she can't look after the child. Is that, a valid reason, etc., etc.?
Well, I'm assuming that after the threshold to when life begins.
Oh
Um,
no, 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 before the fresh.
Sorry, I never heard any of that. My phone kind of buzzed out.
Sorry, before the threshold.
Well, if it's before the threshold, I believe you should have an abortion. You should be able to have an abortion, regardless of reason.
Okay.
After the threshold, I think only if it endangers the child or the mother.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I just we did disagree. What other subjects do we have? Again, economics, as we said earlier, so left and right from an economic standpoint. I know there are social standpoints that are considered left wing and right wing, but we're talking from a purely economic standpoint in this
Yes,
case.
the debate we're having for economics is state ownership versus democratic ownership of the means of production via the workers' self-control versus capitalism.
Yeah, so that one will be separate. Because again, it's social, so it'll be libertarianism versus authoritarianism. Because to
Well,
me,
it,
it's just a
well, state ownership, if it's ownership of the market in the businesses, that's still economics, and it'd still be worth having the debate over for the economic side.
yeah, definitely. What else? Healthcare, so private versus public. Because I don't
Public.
know
Sorry,
recently.
that's just my view. Public, so long as it's a socialist model and not nationalized instead.
Yeah. So as well, I don't know how many of you know, again, because we're from the UK, obviously we have the National Health Service, which turned 70, I think, a few months ago, last month, month before. I actually went to the protest for that too, because of it, parts of it being sold off, etc.
Tories.
Um, Yeah, I guess. Although I don't. I mean, I know Tories that are pro NHS, but yeah, I think specifically Jeremy Hunt is it at the moment?
It
At
was at
least
the
John.
time of the protests.
Oh, is it somebody different now?
Jeremy Hunt is now the foreign secretary. I can't remember who's the new health minister.
Okay, so you'll learn that I'm not very good with names within politics. I'm more of just looking at different standpoints type thing. So yeah, excuse me not knowing all the terms, but yeah, I think that's something we disagree on actually. Because for me personally, I think just because somebody is a Tory doesn't mean like there are going to be people within the Tory party that are pro NHS and the other way around as well.
Uh, I suppose so, yeah, but they will be a minority. I study the ideology of conservatism. That it will be a minority.
Okay, fair enough. Then we have trans rights, and I probably ask questions like, should you think the NHS should help subsidise the surgeries and stuff like that?
This is an
Um,
issue that I actually don't know that much about, but as far as I'm
yeah,
aware, there aren't any. I don't have any issues with trans rights or anything like that. So at the moment, I stand by allowing rights for trans people, and
yeah.
well, specific to the transgender issue. But I'm not that informed on it.
I feel like I'm sort of the same. Although my friend is trans, is it's more sort of the what surgeries there are, what medication you go on to, rather than specifically the rights and that kind of thing that I know about. For me personally, there are a few things that like I don't necessarily have an opinion on, but it's more of a actually kind of thing in terms of I can't remember the person's name, but they identify as a male, no, male to female, but they still have the short hair and the body hair. And
Well, that's fine. I see no issue with that.
see, for me personally, I wouldn't like to accept them as trans, but for me, it concerns me a little bit because it I don't know if it would perhaps shine a bad light on other people
Well,
in
they could just
the
be
in the trans
identifying as
community.
a bit of a. They could just be identifying a bit as a bit of a manly girl, or manly's probably the wrong word, but hegemonic in the aspect of traditional masculinity stereotypes. Like
Yeah,
they could just see themselves as a bit of a still a woman, but different, not subscribing specifically to the expected roles that women generally play in society.
yeah, perhaps. Um, but as I said, with my point of view, it's sort of with that being the first trans person somebody sees, would they perhaps think that that's how all trans people are? Just a personal thing,
I don't
I
really
guess.
think it matters. Let people do what they want to do, as long as they don't make me, as long as they don't want me to call them a word that doesn't exist. Like I'm not calling people Zender or something instead of he or she or they. I'm happy calling people they if they would like me to, but I'm not making up words. I suppose all
Mm,
words are made up, but it's just a jarring difference. And
yeah,
uh, yeah,
and as well, I feel like it shouldn't be something that's legislated. And what I mean by that is in Canada, they had Bill 60, C16. I don't know if you read about that at all.
It rings a bell.
Yeah. Basically, Professor Jordan Peterson
I hate
um
him.
against spoke out against it, and he got slandered for it. And basically, what this law was is a company can be fined if they misgender somebody, even if it's by accident. And basically, he spoke out against it and got slandered for it.
Okay.
And
I hate him personally, but I don't really think I think if he did it by accident, he doesn't really deserve a punishment.
I don't know, he was speaking out against like the law itself. Like,
Oh,
um, basically saying, if it's because he's obviously I think he was against purposefully misgendering some. Well, actually, no, I don't know. I can't remember. But basically, his point of view is if you're polite to me, I'm more than happy to use these pronouns. But as a part of respect for one another, I'd like you to be polite to me, if that makes sense.
that just seems like courtesy rather than a trans issue.
Yeah, I guess. Sorry, 1 second. My phone died again, even though it's on charge. Um, I actually quite like Professor Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you've heard. I think it was 12 Rules for Life, or the title something similar to that. And basically, he it's almost like a self-help type thing, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Basically, one of the things he says is, if you can't keep your room tidy, how are you expected to keep your life organized type thing? And it helped personally. It helped me quite a lot. But how
I
come
don't
you
know
just
much about him in terms of the self-help, but I've watched a few of his politics videos, and I uh, I've watched those, and I think that he's wrong about a great deal many things.
okay? What specifically?
Uh, Economics is what I mainly focus on, so it's most of the videos I watched on him. But there was one about the role of the state in hierarchy inherently, and I think he's wrong there as well as the economics.
Okay. How do you feel about his videos on feminism? I don't know if you saw his interview with the Channel 4 lady who basically tried to have a go at him purely because he
Was he the
spoke up.
blonde one?
She had like really curly hair, like really curly blonde hair, like ringlets.
I think I watched it. Yeah. So he is wrong. So I do believe he is wrong about feminism, but I will also say that the woman he was arguing with was a liberal feminist, and the only reason he won the debate is because he picked an easy target going up against a liberal feminist, and because of that, she never really had any good points, and so it's not difficult to refute them. So he did win the debate, but I mean, like, it's not really something he should be that proud of.
Okay. See, personally, I kind of agree with him because he argues against sort of identity politics. I think that's why he has an issue with feminism because
Well,
it
that's
is
that's the
it is
thing. But it's
identity
like
politics.
that's the point. I like liberals are specifically for identity politics in terms of trying to reform legislature to try and help issues or preferential treatment, even in some cases, like with some liberal feminists, but usually radical feminists. But
Hmm.
the point is that they have no good analysis of why they're being oppressed in any way. And because of that, their solutions fail and they're just very easy to, well, in a sense, take the mick out of. So, I mean, He he does argue against identity politics, which I can understand, but it's an easy target.
Hmm. Okay. Because I suppose that'd be something I'd personally agree with him on. But I think economically, I think we both agree on that he's wrong. Although I don't actually really know that much about
He's his
economics.
economics are basically the same as Margaret Thatcher's.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. I think I disagree with him then.
He doesn't believe in an NHS. He believes everything should be privatized, except for things like the military. Uh, he doesn't believe in welfare. He's basically just he's he's. I'll get into it more when we do the economics debate, but basically he is quite wrong.
That's subjective. Although we agree that is subjective.
Well, some of the things he is objectively wrong about, but whether it's the best system that he advocates for is subjective. However, I do completely disagree with him.
Okay. Um, I like some of his sort of more like self-help stuff. I agree with him on that much. I don't. Did you see his debate with Stephen Fry? Yeah, but he didn't debate Stephen Fry. He debated like alongside him against these two other people. It was on political correctness.
Can't say I have.
It was quite a good debate actually. I quite enjoyed it.
I don't
Yeah.
really understand the political correctness stuff. I haven't looked into it enough.
Basically, like you can't say certain things, etc., to be politically correct and not
Well,
to offend anybody.
well, I would say that it would depend what specific things. If they say that you're not allowed to say the word Bidoof because it's offensive, I think that's stupid.
Yeah,
Then if that it comes to things like you can't, like they're saying you can't advocate for genocide or you can't say the N word or something like that, I can completely understand and agree with that.
okay. It it was more kind of like I can't think of the word. Kind of this sort of mentality that's been that I've seen in the past few years of like everything is offensive and you know you must accept everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw um,
Hello, Patria.
cut off. Sorry. Hello.
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 Hi.
Hi.
Can you
Can
hear
you hear
me?
me?
Uh, just and you're quite echoey.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Damn it.
You,
One
One
second.
second.
hello.
There we go. I should sort it.
Yeah, that sorted it.
Okay, cool. Um, More of like everything's offensive type stuff. Like I don't know if you saw the latest cover on Cosmo
No, I haven't.
with Tess Holiday. She weighs about I think it was £300. I think it was, which is three of me, and I'm kind of chubby to be honest.
Cough, cough, tiny.
I am quite short, but like for my height, I'm quite chubby.
Well, you're not really.
I am kind of like.
Have to
Give me a sec.
respectfully disagree with you here.
Let me share my screen 1 second, and I'll show you the cover.
Why do you have so many tabs?
I don't even know. I was trying to figure out how to live stream for that one. That was just the music for the intro.
Well, at least you've got the adult sites hidden behind the rest.
Cosmo, there we go. This was the cover of the latest Cosmo. Bear in mind, Cosmo is meant to be about like being beautiful and that.
I thought Cosmo was the all-you-could-eat place.
Cosmopolitan. Sorry, not Cosmo.
Oh,
Sorry, I got that wrong. But that's the cover, if you can see it.
what's wrong with the cover?
Personally, as I said, it's about like and like I'm not saying she's not beautiful. Like her face is quite attractive, but my issue comes with like at the weight she is. I don't think she's healthy. She's healthy.
Well, different people
I like.
have different standards of beauty. It's not their place just to
She's-
promote a certain image, because at the end of the day, they're trying to acquire money.
BMI is about nearly 50. No, it was like 41 or something like that. Bear in mind, that classes as morbidly obese, which means she has higher risk of heart disease, etc., etc.
I'm not saying she's healthy. I'm just saying some people might consider that beautiful, and so
Yeah,
and so they'll exploit it to get money.
I'm not saying it's not beautiful, but my point is should that kind of thing be promoted? Argument.
Well, I don't necessarily think it should be, but I would say that there isn't. You don't have the right to prevent it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Oh God, we have an infinity screen again. All right, let me stop screen sharing. There we go. But anyway, he's arguing against sort of outrage culture. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. Well, what other subjects? We're just kind of rambling at this point. I mean, we've got the introduction out of the way, I guess. So I might as well just sit here and ramble.
Yeah.
Trying to see on my phone. Got my phone in front of my computer screen so that you guys can see me. We also have we're gonna talk about 9/11. Nice cheery subject.
Oh, that's not controversial.
Yeah. Because obviously you have truthers out there that say, you know, it was on purpose, the building was blown up from the bottom, and all sorts of different things. Personally, go on, you go first.
Oh, no, it's fine. I interrupt you enough. You go first.
Personally, like, if they did it on purpose, then I can kind of get behind that. But it's when they start going on about it was demolished from the bottom, steel doesn't melt until such and such a temperature, blah blah blah, blah, and start coming up with these elaborate ways around it, then I'm just like, no, because like if it was there's a possibility it could have been a false flag operation, yeah, and again, I'd be way behind. I'd stand behind that because I mean, I can't think who was president at the time. Sorry,
George Bush.
Bush. Yeah, because he was just sitting in a nursery, wasn't he, reading a book, and he got told, and he just carried on reading the book like nothing happened. And I think that's a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
But
Well, sorry.
In terms of it being like demolished from the bottom and like a controlled demolition, I'm a bit like, no, don't think so.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you here. I really don't believe that it was demolished from the bottom, like with dynamite or something. but I do believe that it well could have been a false flag operation. But either way, though, regardless of whether it was, I think the geopolitical impact is the same basically because America has used false flag operations upon themselves in order to enter a war where the public was unwilling to, like they did with Vietnam. At the end of the day, whether America did it to itself so it could invade the Middle East, or whether they were attacked and then invaded the Middle East, at the end of the day, they invaded the Middle East regardless. So we should
Exactly.
focus more on the impact that it had rather than if the American government did it themselves.
And I
Which they
think as well,
definitely knew about, by the way, beforehand, because Vladimir Putin knew about it beforehand, so the American government definitely did. At least part of it.
yeah, and as well, I understand Bush, she was a bit of a warmonger. So it's definitely a possibility. I'd have to be convinced that it was an inside job, but I'll be open to that possibility.
Maybe it was just handled really awfully by George Bush, and then he exploited it to invade places to get the oil.
Yeah, it could have been. The next subject is eco living. I think we both agree on that one as well, don't we?
Yeah, renewable energy. I think that is the only good option, really.
Mm.
Because fossil fuels are running out and have massive detrimental effects on the environment, and nuclear has massive risks that renewable just doesn't have.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you on that. I think if we're gonna carry on living the way that we are living, I think I think it was an extra planet and a half we'd need to carry on living how we are now, and I think that needs to change, definitely.
Well, Patria.
Yeah.
Sorry, you keep. It might be my phone. I don't know.
On my thingy froze. I think
I
my
will.
internet is dropping out.
Okay. Well, that might be true for the fossil fuels, but I will say for things like food, we have enough. We have the agricultural capability on this planet right now, without increasing the yield at all, without making any more farms to feed 13 billion people. So we could continue eating the way we do while raising the standard of living and eating habits of those in poorer nations, and we would still have easily enough food to go around. The issue with that is the allocation of resources, which I would blame on capitalism. But I would definitely agree that renewable energy is the best with energy. But in terms of other resource consumption, like food, as far as I'm aware, that is pretty much only a issue to do with capitalism.
Okay.
I would also
See,
say that the situation of the use of fossil fuels is due to capitalism as well, since they have an economic incentive to do so.
I was gonna say because there is quite a big market behind it. But it kind of leads on to because obviously I'm vegetarian and I want to go vegan as well. I'm not like one of these like everybody must go vegan, blah 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 blah. But one of the reasons that I first was sort of interested in it and was like, oh, I actually want to do this is because of how much grain we would save. Because obviously of how energy is distributed as you go up the food chain, it takes a hell of a lot more energy to feed the cow than feed us, than for us to just directly eat the vegetation and the corn and things like that. We could solve world hunger if everybody went vegan, basically. But I'm not
Well,
going to try and.
actually, Patria, you are right in terms of your science that it does take a lot more energy to feed cattle and stuff than would take to do agricultural resources. But the thing that you've neglected to realize is that um, there's two things. I'll address your point first. The first thing is that we already have enough grain and enough meat to feed the entire world anyway. The reason we don't is because most of it gets thrown away because it's cheaper to throw the food away than and charge the rest of the population a high amount for the stuff that you have for the stuff that you let them buy than it is to sell it all for cheaply. But basically, they get them more money out of it by charging a lot for a few than charging a bit for a lot. So we can already solve world hunger. That's not really an issue. Assuming the population doesn't reach something like 15 billion in the next 100 years. But even then, we don't really have an issue because scientifically we can use vertical farming to increase our yield massively. And the second point is that it's addressing your veganism thing. Now, I personally am not a vegan, but that is more due to a strength of will than to a moral reason. Like I would like to become a vegan, but I don't have the strength of will to do so. However, I will say that we do actually have the scientific methods, like through the use of stem cell regeneration, to just grow meat, just grow, like for example, burgers or just a steak without actually killing the animal at all. I do think that we would have a moral obligation to do that rather than kill the animals, because there would be no downside, because it even saves water, but even though that's not really an issue. But it doesn't harm animals at all, so it is morally better. But the reason we don't do it is because it is very, very expensive at the moment, which is also something I would blame on capitalism.
Okay. See, even if I did somehow manage to synthesize meat, I probably wouldn't eat it still for health reasons to do with things like cholesterol and stuff. But I think it could definitely be a way to make meat healthier as well as
definitely.
as obviously making it without having to kill animals. And I think even though it's still technically meat, I think if it could get to a point where it would be classified as vegan because you wouldn't be killing an animal for it, and it'd be theoretically it could be a lot healthier than animal meat.
Yeah. Well, at the very worst, it would be the same. And at best, it would be healthier because we would be able to genetically alter it to be healthier, assuming that it was done ethically and wasn't done for profit. Because if it was done for profit, they'd basically just tune out like garbage so that you're unhealthy, or put lots of salt in it or something so you'll want more.
Yeah. Okay. Next subject.
My phone might die.
Oh. You can always join the call back.
No, it's fine. I saved it.
Okay, cool. We've kind of led on to the next subject as well, animal rights. We've sort of talked about that, so we can skip that one if you want. Or
sure.
Yeah, or unless there's something to do with animal rights that you want to bring up.
There's not anything else I would like to say, really.
Okay. Next one would be censorship. There has been within the media and social media censorship of certain political views, both from left wing and right wing.
I have the first-hand experience of that.
And like, for example, I think the BBC were caught not hiring people because of being left wing, I think.
Well, that definitely doesn't surprise me.
As well as, on the other hand, Twitter, who is, I personally consider left wing, has been caught shadow banning conservatives in the States. Like, when we say conservatism, we mean from an American standpoint. Because I'm guessing
I would also like to mention that Twitter is not left wing. per se. It is still, for example, capitalist, but it is the left of capitalism at the moment. I
Yeah,
believe it's along the very, I think it's between somewhere like protectionism to liberalism to social democracy at the most left wing. For
yeah.
example, Bernie Sanders.
As I said, they've been caught censoring people that they don't agree with, basically.
Like Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, he's one example of it. I think.
Although they did censor ISIS, which is bad.
Yeah, true. But for for me, I suppose the difference is Milo. I wouldn't say is advocating for violence. Personally, from the videos I've seen, I've not seen him do it. Whereas ISIS probably would be telling people to go and behead people. Probably
Well,
guessing.
they have videos on Twitter of them beheading people, so yeah.
Well, there you go then. Then yeah, that should be banned. But basically, the debate will be about how far should censorship go.
Like, obviously, child porn should be banned.
Yeah. Although obviously there will be people that promote that, and I
Those
think even
people
that
should
will
not
be
be allowed a
on this
platform.
show. Mm. Um, but I mean, I think as far as censoring people just because they have a different political opinion is a bit stupid, to be honest.
Now, I would agree with you to an extent with that, but
Mhm.
viewers, you'll learn this in a lot of my debates, but I do not believe that anyone attacking a protected characteristic or advocating for totalitarianism should be allowed any kind of platform, and that includes fascists and Nazis.
Yeah. See, I think this is something we've debated for out personally between us two. We've debated for hours because although obviously I wouldn't advocate for that kind of thing for fascism, totalitarianism, etc. For me personally, I think censorship can often kickstart things like totalitarianism. For example, as I said earlier in the stream, there's a growing far right presence within Europe, and I think that is partially down to censorship because in my eyes, um, censoring certain points of view forces them underground where they can't be kept an eye on. Therefore, they are able to gain more momentum um, away from the eye of the government. And I think that even if they are bad or are abhorrent ideas, they should still be put forward so that they can be, as I said, one, kept an eye on by the government. I believe certain groups now are being watched by the I think it's this the FBI are watching certain groups at the moment, such as Black Lives Matter, as well as other white supremacist groups. So I think that they should be kept public so that it's easier for groups such as I said, the CIA, the FBI,
Well,
to keep an eye on those groups.
I have a big issue with that though. The issue is that if you allow them to be public, they will still be underground groups as well as the public ones. And by allowing them to have a platform to speak, they will inevitably recruit more people. And so by forcing them underground, yes, it makes them harder to regulate and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's all you're doing is getting rid of the ones that are public. You're not increasing the ones that are not public. And if they're forced underground, it's much harder to recruit people. And, like, for example, if fascists were not allowed to have rallies in the street or anything, if that was completely outlawed and harshly punished, then you would find far, far smaller rallies.
Mm? But as well, I'd bring up the point that as well, censoring them gives them a sense of victimhood in a way, and I feel like that to
I
some
don't think you
people.
can play the victim when you advocate for race cleansing.
I know, but to some, it gives them the ability to use that, and that will convince some people. I believe personally, and as well, if I remember rightly, that's how Hitler started. You know, in a small pub with a few people, and slowly got more and more people.
Yeah, but if he wasn't even allowed to enter the political discord at all, if he wasn't allowed to rally or anything, then the Nazi Party would have been killed in its crib.
But then surely that sets off. Well, that's technically sort of what the left-wing government at the time tried to do, though, from what I remember rightly, because before
They
Hitler came into
have
power,
a left
it
wing
was a
government at the time. Did you hear what I said? Sorry, it went a bit blurry. I can barely hear you a bit now, but I'm just going to say it anyway. At the time, they did not have a left wing government. They were still quite not. They were a very divided parliament, and at the time they had war veterans in government rather than subscribing to any particular party, really. But it was a mixture of Christian parties and right wing parties. I say right wing, but I mean capitalist because basically all capitalism is right wing. But in a sense, it's like they didn't have any, like there were Spartacists in the parliament, a small amount of communists. However, they weren't actually in government. They were just helping decide with a few laws, and even then, they were a small minority. They had no executive power.
I was going to say, because I think it was around the time that, sort of when Hitler was younger, I think, around the time he was trying to get into art school, that's when there was a real major communist presence in Germany. I think. Don't my history isn't the best.
It wasn't. They weren't that big, but there was a communist presence, and it was played up for fear, because they were absolutely terrified of communism.
But going back to my point earlier, I feel like sometimes censorship kicks off. Is it pendulum theory? I think where it flips between left and right, and just gets more and more extreme until you end up with totalitarianism.
Well, I would also like to say that well, it's like when you say left and right, making it go to totalitarianism, the issue with that is that the right wing inherently is more open to totalitarianism in the aspect of they already advocate for hierarchies, while the left seeks to abolish it inherently. And it's like while you can have authoritarian left, they're few and far between. Like, for example, Stalin, in terms of he does subscribe to Marxism Leninism or to his own branch of that. But if you actually look at the economic policies he had in place, they were quite right wing. I can't speak today. Right wing in the aspect of economic hierarchies. And so it's like, I do understand what you're saying, each side goading the other and making the other more extreme. But at the end of the day, it's like the left is not really capable of becoming totalitarian in that way.
I'd argue this, but I mean, we'll argue. I know we'll argue on that for hours. So
we did yesterday.
We'll debate that another time. But yeah, because there's an example of a video I saw. I might link it in the description. Basically, he gives an example of how totalitarianism begins, and basically he describes it as a basically it starts off where him as the person in power creates a law where he can kill. Oh, I can't think exactly what it was. It was
I assume opposite.
certain group, and how a lot of the general public would be against this, but he gets the public behind him by creating fear around this group, if that makes sense. This person is from, in layman's terms, left wing. We'll say in broad terms, left wing. And basically, yeah.
I will like to point out that the left, at least the vast majority of the left, don't actually believe that a group of people should be able to make and decide laws and policy. Most of the left, at least when you get to socialism, which I basically consider to be the only large left-wing movement in the world, I would say that when you get to that, they don't actually advocate for a system whereby people do have the right to make and change laws without the will of the people being directly on board. And so it's like, do you know what direct democracy is?
Yeah, you explained briefly to me. But anyway, carrying on with my example, when I say left wing, I'm on about sort of a Stalinist type. Because to most people, Stalin, although you'd argue otherwise, to most people, Stalin would be left wing.
Well, no, my views on that. That is just completely.
Yeah,
I reject that entirely.
But for the sake of the argument, and for the example, we'll say he's left wing. And anyway, and as I said, he gets people behind him to kill this certain group by creating fear around this group. And then what he starts doing is killing people that don't technically fall under this category, but straw-manning them as such to get rid of political opponents. This is, I believe, very similar actually to what Hitler did, but in this example, we're starting with somebody from the left wing. They could be right wing. And anyway, this form of censorship then means that the civilians begin disliking this left wing group. So next election or whatever, however they do it, a right-wing person comes in, but because the previous left-wing government has forced the right-wing ideals underground, this person they're not exposed as this right-wing lunatic. Nobody knows this right-wing lunatic, so they get into power. And they start using this law that the previous left-wing government put in place to kill people that they don't like. They also add in an extra law to make things like homosexuality illegal and kill those people. This is, as I said, this is very, very similar to what happened when Hitler came into power.
Well, Hitler was the one that did it first. Like, Hitler did it all himself. There was no previous left-wing government that did that, in Germany at least.
I don't know enough about Germany's government, but as I said, Hitler's ideas were very underground at the time. Is my argument. So when he came to power,
his true ideas anyway.
The severity of his views.
I will like to point out that I definitely believe that people like Lenin and Stalin were not left-wing in the slightest. But I will like to point out that even if you consider them left-wing, I still don't defend them and all the systems that they live under or advocate for. And so by saying that the left does this and then the right does this. I reject both of those systems. I reject both fascism and Stalinism, which I actually consider to be closer to fascism than anything else. I will like to point out that I reject them both, and what I advocate for is wholly different. So the point doesn't really stand against the socialism by the definition I gave earlier.
Okay, all right. As I said, I think that we obviously disagree on that. But as I said, I think just for the
Well,
sake of the
whatever you
majority,
want to call it, it doesn't apply to what I advocate for.
yeah, and I understand that you subscribe to a different form of socialism, and I'm not trying to obviously not trying to lump you in with those types of people. Because personally, I would describe you as left libertarian, but a Leninist or a Stalinist is authoritarian. That's how I would distinguish them, personally.
I'm getting a Sprite.
Anyway,
Any other issues?
yeah, we've still got a few left. We've got sexual orientation, which I think could be.
Yeah, I believe that is completely okay, whatever your sexual orientation is, as long as it's oriented at people that can consent. So, no animals, no kids.
Yeah, broadly, I think I agree with that. Snacks. College and education, public versus private, further education, whether people should pay for that kind of thing.
Well, I think everybody's going to figure out my view on that by now. Socialized so that the workers control the system itself, so that it's basically so that it's horizontal and democratic. It's not nationalized in a sense, but it is done for the good of the people rather than for profit. But I would heavily stress the worker self-management.
Okay, so for me, I'm not keen on the current education system personally. As somebody who has struggled a hell of a lot in the current education system, because the current education system, I feel like it's very analytical, I think is the best word.
Well, it's hierarchical, really. In a sense that you don't get to choose what you learn, you don't get to choose, even if you get to choose a subject, you don't get to choose the specific things in the subject. So you might be doing history, but you want to learn about the battles, but instead of learning about about medicine, you don't want to do that. It's hierarchical based. Plus the domination that teachers have over the students, which is why I advocate for democratic schooling, which is its own system that will take too long to explain now, but when we get to that video, I will explain it there.
I agree with you in terms of like older students, but I think when it comes to younger students, they're not really old enough to make those decisions. Personally,
well, they are some. I mean, at very least, they're old enough to decide when they need to go to the toilet.
Yeah, but I think, I suppose my point is, I think leave that kind of thing until they're a bit older. And I think rather than teaching each student their own specific thing, I think maybe rather than having one set curriculum, have modules that the students can choose from.
Well, I'd try and attempt to have it so that when they get to, at least when they get to higher levels, they would have the ability to choose the specific things they do, kind of like a university diploma. They get to choose what they're doing it on. They get to choose their own thing in a sense. But I would have that at lower levels than just university. I'd have that at college, and I'd have that at secondary school.
Yeah.
Primary school, I would have more autonomy, and I would have much more of a democratic system. But I wouldn't necessarily allow them to choose everything themselves, and not
Yeah.
just so that they, well, just so in a sense that they have a grasping of all of the subjects. Like if they're really, really good at art, but I don't think it would be healthy for them to neglect maths as well.
Yeah. But going back to what I was saying, for me personally, I'm a very vocational person. I struggle when something is too academic, too focused on written work. Especially with certain subjects. And as well, such a strong focus on maths and English, and very specific subjects. I
They are
struggle with.
useful, it's just that they shouldn't emphasize one more than the other.
Yeah, because I feel like there should be more choice, as you said, on the subjects that are taken as well. Not just when you get to sort of college and university, but sort of lower down in school as well. Because I mean, I'd have loved to have learned certain things in school rather than having to wait till college to do them.
Mummy,
Like
what are
that.
taxes? Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Exactly. Like it's. I said those things aren't necessarily useless, but you won't really need them unless you go into a very specific area of work. I think is
Well,
my
you
point.
would need them. You would need them anyway, just so that people don't fall into superstition and dogma and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
they should. My point is that they should teach other things as well, like taxes and stuff, as well as having it taught autonomously and in a sense where the child has a greater say. Uh, but I mean, I do think that things like biology and things should be taught anyway. It's just that there should
yeah.
be additional things as well.
Because like I'd love to have focused on the medical side of biology. I mean, I have a level 3 in first aid. I did it as work briefly. I think I've told you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've dealt with, although not. I didn't get them into the ambulance, but I mean I dealt with I helped deal with a spinal injury,
Yeah.
it's a motocross event at one point, and I'd have loved to have learned more on that earlier in life because it's something that
How many lives could be saved with that?
that as well. I think if I'd have had the opportunity to learn it younger, I think I would have got a lot further in it than I have, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Rather than just learning about how the body works, actually doing some real life medical practice, just so that I mean, I don't know what it's like in Europe and the States and everywhere else, but in the UK we have an extreme shortage of nurses, and I think that basic training would allow people to be at least be like assistants on a ward on wards, and take some weight off the nurses that already do 12-hour shifts and longer.
Yeah. Patria, not meaning to interrupt you or something. Sorry to, but how long is this? How long are we going to be doing this thing to do? Because I have to get up early in the morning and I've got a few things to do before I go to bed.
Well, if we could, we're nearly at the end of the list anyway. So
Oh,
shall we
okay, cool.
say, okay, but the NHS is something I feel very passionate about personally. I mean, when I was born, I was in the special care baby unit, which for those of you that don't know, it sort of clues in the name. You know, it looks after premature babies and just generally babies who are ill at a young age. And I feel like when with my family being in the economic status that they're in, I mean they're not poor, but like they're not rich either, kind of. And I think even they would have struggled if we'd have lived in the States to pay for the medical bills for me.
Yeah, in the States because of capitalism and the charge master system they have in the States, it really is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's something I definitely agree with. And that's something I actually kind of dislike Trump for, because that's something he'd said he'd do. He said he'd replace Obamacare and replace it with something better, and as far as I know, he still hasn't done it.
Well, his idea of better isn't an NHS. His idea of better is exactly what they had before Obamacare.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. What's the next? No. But as I said, in terms of education, I think we both agree on. I think it should be more specialized at a younger age to give
Definitely.
students a better idea of where they want to go. Possibly, I know it sounds really stupid and like it's from some teen fiction or something, but like an aptitude test kind of thing, and looking at where your skills are and what sort of things you enjoy and where you might be good at working. So, a child that perhaps shows a particular talent for playing a violin, they show a natural talent to it. Get them into violin lessons, or again, if they show a particular talent for biology, get them into a young person's nursing course or for a paramedic, depending on what kind of thing you think they'd be better for. Perhaps if, say, you had a 15-year-old or something like that who is good at looking after children, maybe get them um into like child development classes and get them on the route to
I could
being
understand that, but they'd have to have the consent of the child first.
yeah. But I feel
Patria,
like
what's the? Sorry, sorry, I'm just in a little bit of a rush now. What is the next point?
gun control. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
just for the sake of the viewers, I'll explain very briefly what I believe, and that's that I believed in localized, organized groups that I would say militia, but some people don't like the use of that word. But I wouldn't allow armed individuals only uh, through democracy and through mutual consent of the localized area. Should a militia be allowed access to weaponry in the event of a self-defense in, like, for example, an invasion? But I completely disagree with allowing individuals to have weaponry, because if they did, then they could just go on mass shootings like we see in America.
hmm I think just for a bit of context, when you say militia, you don't necessarily mean like armed like gangs and stuff. I think just to sort of contextualize what you're saying, you mean sort of like a standing army, like
Yes, a democratically organized like reserve force in the case of an emergency.
Yeah. I
That is
can't think of the
drawn
name.
from the people.
Like the Home Guard, similar to what we had during the World War, I think, is kind
In a
of the thing
sense,
you're
yeah.
going. Yeah. For me, I think totally pro gun control, but ammo control, because I think from the statistics I've looked at personally, ammo control has been shown to be more effective.
Fair enough.
But yeah. Next subject: capital punishment.
I'm for in some cases for certain crimes.
Yeah. Again, I think, as I said earlier, I'm a conscientious objector, so no thanks. Next subject is drugs. So legalization versus criminalization, and the DARE system in the States.
The DARE system has failed. This is my view, by the way. The DARE system has failed. I would legalize most drugs, and I would heavily regulate them so that the health of the individual is best maintained.
Yeah. I think I agree on that. One of the statistics being, my point of view being that criminalizing drugs raises the value of the drugs, thus having a knock-on effect, making them more worthwhile to produce, meaning they're produced more, thus there's more in the system. It's very counterintuitive, I think. I think we both agree on that one. Euthanasia is the next one.
I think you have the right to die when you're in enough physical or emotional pain, so long as you're legally sane.
I think I can agree with that one as well. I'm gonna quote my grandfather. If he was to keep some of, because sorry for context, he owned a dairy farm, and one thing he always used to say is, if I kept some of my animals in the condition of some of our people, I would have the RSPCA and all sorts. You know, I'd have my farm shut down, basically. He didn't say those words exactly, but that sort of thing. And
Yeah,
I
I know what you mean.
have to agree. I think in some cases it's fairer. Okay, and final subject is immigration.
I am completely for immigration. I have no issue with it whatsoever based on race or ethnicity. So long as they're not criminals, I would allow immigration. And I believe that immigration between sufficiently developed nations, as in standard of living wise, I believe that there should be freedom of movement between those areas.
Yeah, I think
As long as there's
I
some kind of common language so that people, or a common language would help, I would heavily advocate for that.
Yeah, and I think, as I said as well, I agree. Although I think something that has to be kept an eye on is obviously assimilation. As you said, if they're criminals, you know, if they're causing problems in the country that they've moved into, then I think a country should have the right to kick that person out of the country if they're causing
I'm an
problems.
internationalist and don't really believe in countries in that sense, but I do understand what you're saying. And I would also like to say that a lot of people want integration stuff, but I personally do not care about cultural integration even a little bit. As long as they speak the language of the area and as long as there's a common language, that is fine with me.
Yeah, and as I said, I feel like with the kicking out criminals, I think personally that goes down to my point of view of the point of the state is to protect the civilians and nothing more. And I feel like kicking out those criminals is protecting those civilians. I mean, I'd be for nationals of a country being kicked out being exiled if it came down to it. Although then you are putting a burden on another country in a way, I guess. But yeah, I think that's our final subject.
Is that us wrapped up then?
Yeah, thank you for coming and rambling, and to anybody who watched or is watching, thank you for putting up with our hour of rambling. Yeah, and if anybody wants to join the debate, then feel free to private message me on Google Plus or whatever on here. Yeah, and we will see you all later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.